The tests are for you because it gives you something. It gives you motivation. Why do I need to give you motivation? The 1 or 2 psych majors in here don't need motivation to read and study this stuff because they want to learn it. And what's really great is that I was talking to one of my students who's in my research methods class. One of her friends got her PhD or master's degree in cognitive science and cognitive psychology at UCSD. She now works for PlayStation. PlayStation, you know. She does cognitive research with people playing VR headset games. So she studies the thought process going on involved and the human performance and all this other cool stuff of people playing VR headset games. She gets paid $120,000 a year to play video games. If you like playing video games, she's like, yes, best job ever. Because when they come out with something new at PlayStation, they've had it in the lab for 2 years prior to sending it out. Or at least 6 months. So a lot of times if they release something too fast, what happens to it? It's crashed and it bugs and it causes seizures in kids. Sorry, Pokemon cartoon. 1997, 1998, a Pokemon cartoon had a series of explosions during one of the movie theaters, and it caused a bunch of kids to develop epilepsy. Well, it's actually a form of what's called mass hysteria. One kid had a seizure, an epileptic. The series of flashes caused the seizure. The kid next to him got so scared he had a seizure, and the 4 kids around them got so scared that they had seizures. And there's a really sad / funny episode of The Simpsons where he goes to Japan, and they're walking by a movie theater, and there's just a line of guys with stretchers, these little kids on the stretchers coming out of the theater. Yeah, and this, The Simpsons. So you see Bart and Homer walking down the street, and behind them you see the movie theater with the name of the movie on it. Simpsons are really well done, just in case. Anyway, but there's something about if I just say, let's learn, people, yay! Sorry for the hippie crap. But that works for some of you. Okay? You watch that video, and you're like, I have to read, and then you start reading more about it. Nerd, sorry. But the reason I say that is because if you become interested in something, what happens to the motivation you have for it? It increases. So if you don't have we'll talk about the types of motivation in a minute, but if you don't have the motivation, I'm going to give you a test. You are graded on this test. All of a sudden, do you have motivation to do it? Yes. And so this is why the assignment that I put up, how come I didn't have you turn it in online until I told you had to do it on the test? Not the little thing we did last class. No, well, I wanted you to have a piece of paper or have something with you when you did the assignment so you could have a better discussion. My Tuesday, Thursday class did not have a better discussion than you guys did. You had a much better discussion in here than they did. They kicked your butt on the last exam, but you did better at the discussion. So we'll work on that. If I have you turn it in online ahead of time, I can check to see if you have it done. Do you think more people would have it done if I said, do this, it's due this time? Yes, because as soon as there's a deadline, it forces you to motivate yourself to do things. And so that's if you're aware of deadlines, if you're aware of schedules, that changes your motivation. So we're going to talk about motivation and goals today. But one of the things that we talk about in motivation is motivation runs in 2 different layers. So can someone tell me what motivation means to begin with? Okay. The want or drive to do something. So there's a bunch of different ways that we can talk about motivation, but it's generally the want or a drive to do something. So there's 2 different flavors of motivation. We all operate in both sides. Don't think it's one or the other. It's always both. But it's intrinsic and it's extrinsic. My buddy Ken right now is defending his doctoral dissertation. I should get credit for his doctoral dissertation because I did the frickin' stats for him because he's a moron. Anyway, he is a volleyball coach. He is a great athlete and a very good volleyball player himself. I went to college with him. He is a wonderful person, but cannot remember stats to save his life. At all. Even on his final slide on his dissertation, he was writing stuff, and I'm like, dude, you can't say that. He goes, why? Oh, just don't say that. You say that, you're going to fail your dissertation. So, anyway, why do I help him with his statistics? I care about Kenny's life and well-being, and I want him to be done asking me questions about his dissertation. I do happen to have stolen his data, and we are going to use it in my stats course, but that's not important. And it's a really cool data, and there's a lot of good actual real publishable results out of the data that he did collect, but he doesn't realize that. That's good. Okay, moving on. But the second thing is that I feel I like doing statistics. Taylor, one of my other students, her mom is finishing her dissertation, and she emailed me 3 times now, hey, can you help me with my stats? And I'm like, yeah! Do I like doing stats? Yeah. Are they paying me for it? No, I gotta work that angle, but whatever. They're not paying me for it. I'm just doing it. Kurt, one of our CIS instructors, his wife is a nurse at Children's Hospital and wants to design a paradigm to test the effectiveness of early breastfeeding on childhood survival. So she had me come up with, she asked me, can you help me figure out a way to do this? I'm like, sure. I'm not asking to get paid for it because do I intrinsically like doing statistics? Yes. Most of my students don't intrinsically like doing statistics. Most of them sit down and suffer through it. Please make it end. That gives me, as a statistician, always a job. Moving on. Okay. So, but why would you have to take statistics? Why would you want to? Checkbox. Okay. Good morning. Okay. So for a lot of people, there is an extrinsic reward. What's the extrinsic reward for taking a test? Yeah. The extrinsic reward for taking a test is the grade. As soon as you get the grade, do you continue studying? No, because as soon as the grade is achieved, studying ceases. If you're intrinsically interested in something, are you ever done with it? No. So if one of the things that if you look at my stupid Google image feed, what are some of the main things that are in my Google image feed? We've done this a couple times. Yeah, skiing, dogs, and bicycles. And my kids, they're in there a lot. And random crap that I take pictures of, but that's irrelevant. Okay, but why are there so many pictures of bicycles? Why do I like bicycles? I like fixing them. I like even just sitting and looking at them. I have my time trial bike out and the tires are pumped up and I've got it all kind of dialed in again because I want to do a time trial here this spring sometime. Why? Don't know. Just do. But just getting my bicycle out of the shed and working on it for a little while, does that cause happiness? So I'm going to write this under here. Pause. Crashing. In intrinsic motivation, the behavior itself is the reinforcement. In intrinsic motivation, the behavior is the reinforcement. I'm trying to remember names. I remember Anna, but I don't remember. I know you're not Anna, because you weren't here, so I forget what your name is. But, what's your first name? Don't remember that at all. Okay, Sydney. So, Sydney and I were talking about baseball. There's a lot of kids that play baseball. It's one of the more popular sports for young people to play. What keeps a person playing baseball throughout high school and college and continuing to play baseball? They like it. The people that actually play, a lot of the kids that play varsity baseball quit if they're good at it but don't like it. Because is it a lot of time and work? How many games? Like 3 games a week. If you don't love playing baseball, it's a job. And if you don't win, it's a job that sucks. But if you love playing baseball, why do you keep playing baseball? Because the behavior of playing baseball is the only reward that you need. And that's the thing for bicycling for me, is that bicycles themselves are the idea, the behavior of bicycles, whatever that means, is automatically rewarding. Even if I was supposed to bring my trials bike today to class, because I was going to ride it around in front of class, but I totally forgot to put it on the car this morning. So I got here and I look on the car, I'm like, oh. So it's all right. But I'll ride it around on Monday. But just having my bicycle around makes me feel better because it's something that's intrinsically rewarding. I've been playing bicycles pretty much ever since I could walk. I've always had a bicycle. Well, I continue to always have bicycles. Yeah, because the bicycle itself is the reward. It's not riding it, it's not fixing it, it's not having an expensive one, it's not having a cheap one. It's just bicycles in general. I helped the homeless guy down the street. He crashed into the side of my father-in-law's truck. I feel really bad. He only had one set of brakes and it was raining, came down a big hill and just clobbered it and broke his shoulder probably. So there's a little camp that's behind Planet Fitness. So I brought some spare parts and like, can I help you fix your bike so you don't die again? And it's fun working on old bicycles, especially ones that are hodgepodge together. They're kind of my favorite. Anyway, but if I work at a bike shop, what happens? Why not? Why do you work at a bike shop? For money. So as soon as you start extrinsically rewarding something that you have intrinsic reward for, it takes away from the intrinsic reinforcement. Okay, it's called the over-justification effect. Possibly a case of professional sports. Some athletes, when they get out of college, they get these huge signing bonuses to play, and what happens to them? They bust. They get all this money, and then the next 2 seasons they're crap and they get cut. And do they ever get picked up by anybody else after that? Sometimes, but it's like you see more of the people that if the person is playing the sport to get the check. Playing professional level sports is really hard. I mean, you see these folks that make everything look super easy, but I had a couple of friends that were San Diego State football players, and a couple of them went to the pros, and these guys were amazing athletes, but after every single game, they're in the ice bath, they're getting rehab, they are beat up. Is it worth it for the paycheck? If you love what you do, yes. But if you really hate playing football, my buddy Hank, his job was catch football, Hank. Yes, coach. Great hands. Richmond Spiders, national championship, 1990 something, whatever he was in college. But he basically got a full ride scholarship to a private college, private university, to catch the football. He did 4 years. Eligibility's over. What did he do with the football? Finished his 5th year, got his degree. He actually works. He really likes football. How come he doesn't play anymore? He's my age, that's one reason, but that's beside the point. He can't do this. Only got one click that time. He can't do what I just did. How come he can't do that? All the abuse on his body for playing college football for 4 years. He can't just squat down and stand back up again. He works at, what's the new football league right now in San Diego? The Fleet. He works as security for the Fleet. He's like chief of security. He was a CHP officer for many years. How come he dropped the CHP officer gig? People try to kill you as a job. No thanks. Okay. As soon as he finished that, retirement done. So he's following, a lot of his career, he's following the extrinsic motivation. Is that bad to follow extrinsic motivation? Not necessarily. Because you get rewarded for extrinsic motivation? Yes. Now, one of the things he does, my buddy Hank does have, he has a $95,000 Mercedes right now. The new, whatever they used to, what are the super fast ones? They used to have it's the AMG, but it's the new version of the AMG. The SLK is a little pansy car. This thing is a death machine. So it's a saloon four-door sedan. He had one of those station wagons with a 6.3 liter V8 in it. 600 plus horsepower in a big station wagon. He's had M3s, he has M5s. He's had, every 2 years he leases a new, crazy, ridiculously expensive car. As soon as his son moves out, he's going to get the Porsche. That's the next level for him. But he said, I got to do that right before I die, though, because it might be the last car I ever own. I want that to be the last car I own. But so, why does he keep buying really expensive, nice cars? That's his intrinsic motivation. He works his job so he can have his nice car. And as a CHP officer, does he have a license to speed? He has his little badge and his get pulled over. He went from El Cajon to the border of California at averaging 180 miles an hour in a Corvette. Why? He just wanted to see if he could do it. By the way, you can't go quite so fast down the corner, so he had to make up time other places. Just saying. Anyway, but when he got there, the car just shut off. He completely drained the gas tank. And he's like, you realize we're out of gas. It's a lot of gas, by the way. Anyway, so the weird thing is that if you have something that is intrinsically motivating, that makes you happier and healthier. So one of the things we talked about happiness is finding your intrinsic motivation. What about things like drugs and, and other addictive kind of things? What are they? Yeah. Why are drugs extrinsic? Like, let's say you really enjoy hitting the bong when you get home from school. Please not in the morning. But what does that do for what's the reward for that? The feeling of getting stoned, or the feelings that you get from it. And the feelings that you get from it are external. Even though a lot of people believe that the internal processes they open their mind and free their consciousness. I'm going to give you a quick hint. You don't need drugs to open your mind and free your consciousness. Drugs are an avenue. There's some people that go, we talked about this I think before, they go to the Amazon and do the crazy psychotic trippy things. A friend of ours did that. And he came back a changed person. He goes, I see the world completely differently. I totally understand the world in a better place right now. But he was also highly educated before he went. If I take a random high school kid, give him LSD and throw him to Disneyland, does he come back, or he or she come back with more profound experience of the meaning of life? Dude, that was totally awesome! That's what they get. But if you have a deep foundation of theoretical knowledge, and then you tweak yourself, all of a sudden you have meaning of life questions answered, not just, dude, that was awesome! Okay. By the way, I highly recommend the Alice in Wonderland ride and the Winnie the Pooh ride. Whoa! Out there. Moving on. Okay. So, have you ever done the Winnie the Pooh ride? Dude! What was that guy on? Pooh eats some funky honey, and all of a sudden, all the heffalumps are in Technicolor and flying around, and Piglet's dancing a little dress, and dude, Pooh, put the honey down, walk away. Moving on. And Alice in Wonderland is just the whole thing. It's just one hook of pipe. Okay. But the idea of this is that drugs are extrinsic. Because what becomes the motivation for using the drug? The drug becomes the motivation for using the drug. Nicotines become intrinsically motivating. Nicotine becomes intrinsically motivating. Why do people smoke cigarettes? Because of the nicotine. What's the reward for smoking the cigarette? Smoking the cigarette is the reward for smoking the cigarette. See how that works? Whenever there is any drug that is very fast acting, the behavior becomes the reward. That's why drugs like cocaine and amphetamine, when you get down to the deeper levels of drug use and you're injecting your drugs, that is when the drug use becomes the reinforcement. The drug itself just becomes a part of the reinforcement. Why is it so hard to break addiction like nicotine and meth? Because of the reward value is so high, if you try to get out of it, the suffering is so high. Okay, so when you look at this intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, intrinsic motivation, you have to find it. It doesn't actually just hit you. Can you teach yourself to be intrinsically motivated by something? Can you teach yourself to have a hobby? How? But what if working out, you really want to make working out some intrinsic part of your life? So you go work out and you hate it. Well, you're going to do it because, not you specifically, but somebody goes out and works out because everybody knows that working out's good for them. There's nobody that says working out's bad for you. No one. People say, I don't work out. Why? It's too hard. People say that all the time. Well, I don't like to suffer. But it turns out that if you think of working out as suffering, if you picture the standard CrossFit Games, people as working out, does working out really suck if you're looking at the full-on CrossFit cray-crays? I respect the CrossFit cray-crays. We did a CrossFit workout this morning, actually. That's not important. But that's not working out. What does a workout mean? Getting your heart rate up. What's the easiest way to work out? Smoking cigarettes. No, that gets your heart rate up, but that's not important. Running is way too hard. I ran out of miles. I can't run anymore. Walk. Humans are evolved to walk. Humans can walk all day. Pretty well. What's the only problem with humans walking all day? If you have any sort of imbalance, walking all day causes problems. So if humans can get up and walk around all day and have no problem unless you have some sort of physiological balance problem. What happens if you walk on the outside of your feet? What if you try to walk all day? I see people when you walk around. I watch your feet. Your ankles start hurting. Your knees hurt. Your hips hurt. Your feet get blisters on the side. Can you learn to walk without wampusing your feet? It's really hard. I bought a pair of those Nike Frees. Those Nike Frees are just squishy. That's all they are. So if you have any bad sort of ankle rotation and you wear those, you're twisting your ankle every 3 seconds when you're walking. These suck. But how do you fix your floppy feet? Insoles are the wrong answer because that's modifying the shoe to match your floppy feet. Balance. You have to work on balance. Walk barefoot. When you walk barefoot, how do you balance? With your toes and your feet. Like I ruptured the tendon in the bottom of this foot. I ruptured the plantar fascia. So when I step, these 3 toes go to the side, and they're not attached to anything anymore. So if you watch my footprints when I'm walking after getting out of the pool or something, my one foot's got toes that stick out the side. It's awkward. But I wear 90% of the time I wear very flat shoes or shoes with no support whatsoever in them. Because I spend as much time as I can barefoot, my feet are very strong. Even though it moves funny, when I wear my shoes, I'm very symmetrical in how I wear out my shoes. I pay attention to it. When I'm walking, I make sure I'm very conscious of it. It's really annoying to have to learn how to walk. But little things like that, is that working out? Yes. Learning how to walk properly is working out. One of my students, can't remember her name, I see her walking up campus like this. I'm like, oh, what happened? She goes, oh, nothing. I broke my ankle last year, and I just still kind of walk like that when I'm not thinking about it. Is that, if you walk with a limp, what's going to happen to you? You're going to limp forever. No. You're going to limp as long as you stop thinking about not limping. Why do they have you wear the crutches around, even though how pain in the assy it is? It teaches you not to limp. So when you get back on your wounded part, you can walk without limping, and then you'd stop limping on it. It's a lot of little things about this. But the idea of it is that if you're working out, so you look a certain way, intrinsic or extrinsic? Extrinsic. How long does that last? Most people work out for about 3 months. So a gym membership surged at the beginning of the year. By the end of March, what are you doing? You're back to your old habits again, and your workout habits decrease. Unless you would find an intrinsically motivating way to maintain your working out. A lot of people like to try to lose weight really quickly. Or one of the women that joined our gym, she goes, I need to lose 40 pounds. And she wouldn't tell us why. She was 6'2". She was a very large person. She goes, I need to lose 30 pounds. We found out later she was trying to do in vitro fertilization. And they would not stick an embryo in there unless she had lost 40 pounds. So she was hyper-focused on trying to lose weight, not necessarily on how to work out. And what's funny is that when we were doing exercises, she would do like 5 or 6 and then huff and puff and breathe, and then wait for us to finish, and then do the next round, do 5 or 6, huff and puff and breathe. And she kept doing the same thing every time. So the trainer basically says, why don't you try to do one more? She goes, I'm tired. Well, it's okay that you're tired. Just do one more. So in a couple weeks, she had worked up, and because she was a very big, strong person, she played softball at the national level for a long time. Because she was a big, strong person, she was using the same weights that I use after about 3 weeks in the gym. But did she lose any weight? No. And so she was saying, oh, this is stupid, I'm not going to do this anymore. Because what was her motivation for doing this? Losing weight. She changed the way she looked significantly in the couple weeks that she was there. Because what happens when you lift, when you get stronger? You gain muscle and you lose squishy, but you weigh the same. That's why I don't like the word fat, I like the word squishy. Are you fat? No, I'm just squishy. Yeah, anyway, so, but the thing is that if you want to lose weight really quickly, there's a simple, super simple way to do it. Don't stop eating, that's really a bad way to do it. Yeah, eat lots of vegetables, don't eat any salt, and drink a crap ton of water. And guess what'll happen? Foop! As soon as you start eating salt and crap again, what'll happen again? Foop! It'll come back. But that's okay, because if you have to fit in that dress, or that tux, I have like one suit that I own. I always do that right before I have to wear my suit. Ooh, which is the gala, which is coming up in a couple weeks. So you'll watch me lose about 15 pounds so I can wear my suit, so I don't have to get it altered. Will I gain it back like 2 weeks afterwards? Extrinsic weight. I know it's bad for you. It doesn't matter. It's just water weight. Okay. $300 for a suit versus suffering for a week or two. But I keep changing. Yeah. Right. So why does he work at different jobs to make a lot of money? So he can have a nicer car. He likes having fast cars. He likes having cars that go fast. His intrinsic passion is cars. If you look at his internet search feed, because I'm his IT guy, what are there mostly pictures of? Cars. Because the drugs are a dangerous way to talk about this, because drugs provide extrinsic rewards. So if you work really hard in order to fix the drug, what is the main purpose of, like, a lot of people get addicted to opiates, like heroin and that kind of stuff. Okay? And a lot of people get addicted to those drugs because they're very addictive. So if you're working really hard to feed your habit, what's the purpose of your job? Feed your habit. Now, but if the drugs, the problem with a lot of addictive drugs is they do become intrinsically reinforcing. In other words, the act of doing the drug becomes the reinforcement. What happens to that person in the social world with other things? You lose the other parts of your social world because the intrinsic motivation for the drug becomes greater than any other motivation. And that's actually where we're going to sneak over here when we start talking is, if you are completely obsessed with bicycles and you can't do your job, is that healthy? So if you're completely obsessed about drugs and you can't do everything else, is that healthy? See, that's the bigger picture here. So a lot of drugs become intrinsically reinforcing, especially heroin and meth and a lot of the really hardcore drugs. They become, and nicotine, cigarettes have the same, and vaping thing has the same effect. But what if you spend all your money on your fancy car and you don't have enough place to live, or a nice place to live, or you can't provide food for your family because you're spending money on your car? Then we say something's going wrong with your social functioning as a result of this most strong motivation. So the key thing, and that this is one of the main points that we want to do here, and that's a great question, is it's the balance. Your life has to be balanced between intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. If you are 100% intrinsic, do you care about anybody other than your own personal self? No. And as a result, that's not healthy either. And we'll show you why here. We look at this little diagram here. But there's two different philosophies represented in this scheme. The one on the, let's see, that would be your left side where it says Western psychology. This is a guy by the name of Maslow, which writing on with a white background does not work. Whoa, not what I wanted. It's a researcher named Abraham Maslow. Maslow decided that he wanted to look at why people are motivated to do what they do. What gives people motivation? And so he looked all over the place. And on the eastern side, this is yoga. Which came first, Western psychology or yoga? Yoga. People in India developed these principles of yoga long before a lot of history was written down. And the yoga philosophy is very simple, and without making annoying accents, but you have these these 7 chakra, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And what these different chakra are these different lines of focus. And you can get into all the medical, physical, hippie crap that you want. That's why I said I apologize for the hippie crap. I love this stuff. But if you keep these things aligned, you are able to stay at peace. In other words, yoga is all about balance. It's all about balance. Speaking of balance, hold back. Oh. Okay. Remember, don't stomp all over them. Okay, I'll help you clean them up after class. Okay. Well, this one's got some sticky. Okay, so I'm not above bottom feeding. Okay, now, especially for Cheetos. So you take those and you dip them in the salmon flavored cream cheese. It's great road trip food till you get out of the car and talk to somebody. Okay, moving on. So, my solar plexus, this one, that's not a lot of good. Okay, so the way these chakra line up, these are points of energy in your body. Now, if you believe there's actually physical little glowing balls of energy in your body, that's one philosophy. But I have to look at this from the Western psychological perspective just because that's the perspective I'm trained in. But it starts out when you have there's basic physiological needs. Basic physiological needs. What are the basic physiological needs? Food. What else? No, shelter's up here for safety. Food, water, sex, sleep. Well, it's really important. If you look at a lot of animals, well, they hurt themselves in order to engage in sexual activity. Yes, they will jump fences, they will run across traffic. One of my favorite ones is they took a female rat, an estrus, so she's like saying, I'm available, and they put a little male rat on the next cage over. A little male rat goes, challenge accepted, and runs over to the female. When the female's not an estrus, the male just goes, eh. Okay? So then they take like a puddle of water, like a little swimming pool, put it between the rat and the female rat. Rats generally don't like to swim, but can they swim? Yeah, they'd rather avoid it. If the female's an estrus, kerplunk, swim, jump. Okay? They put a little fire in the center of it. The rat's like all of a sudden Evel Knievel, jumping through the fire to get the female. Then they take laboratory cat. Laboratory cat is a trained cat to deal with the rats. The cat does not attack rats, but as far as the rat is concerned, a cat should be lethal. The cat urine smell is that's why cats, if you have a cat in your house, you generally don't have mice in your house because the smell of the cat keeps the mice away. That's why a lot of farms have cats, because it keeps the mice out of the grain. Anyway, so cat, female lady in estrus, male rat. What does a male rat do? Runs across the cat. So is the cat really thinking about this? Well, maybe if I get eaten by girl. Okay, humans hopefully are a little bit more complex than that, but moving on. Okay. But these are what we call the physiological, these are basic biological needs. We use the word need here. We use the basic word need here because these are things that your body requires in order to stay alive. Okay? And maybe not sex to stay alive, but depending on who you talk to. Now, I'm going to die. Okay, now, the second level goes to safety. Second level goes to safety. And so when you talk about your safety, it's funny that they talk about this, you feel it in your gut when you feel something dangerous about to happen. That's one of the kind of the reason of this sacral chakra is that you feel danger in your stomach. Why would you feel danger in your stomach? Your sympathetic nervous system, that part that tells you your fight or flight, stops your stomach from digesting. So your stomach is constantly moving. Next time after dinner, just lay there flat on the floor and look at your stomach. And you see this. It's really kind of cool. Okay? And so your stomach is constantly moving, but when you get stressed, what happens to your stomach? It stops. It goes, and you feel it. Boom. That's why they say you have a gut feeling, because that's safety. So what is safety? Shelter, yeah. Safety is shelter. So then, it's interesting is that Maslow said basically, if you have these basic needs satisfied, then people start working on the next level. The next level is love and belongingness. What is the base level of love and belongingness that people have? What is the bottom of love and belongingness? Well, family. Family, according to Maslow, is the base of love and belongingness. How do you survive as an infant? Somebody cares about you. It doesn't have to be mom or dad, but someone has to care for. What happens to babies who people don't care for? They die. The same thing with rats and puppies and lots of other animals. If something doesn't care for them, they die. So we basically need this family. We need this love and belongingness. Because once you establish love and belongingness, does it increase your safety? Yes. Okay, and then you also increases your physiological needs. So this is where most of you are. Most of you are at this level of Maslow's development, this level of motivation. Because what are most young people trying to establish right now? Well, what's a part of your identity right now, though? Well, self-esteem comes up next. A lot of you will struggle with self-esteem for the next couple of years. I have a wonderful new adjunct right now, and it's so fun watching him because he's really struggling with what he wants to do in his life. He's finished his master's degree. He goes, okay, I want to get a job. I don't know what I should do. What should I do? I don't know what I should do. And he's struggling for esteem. He's struggling to figure out what he wants to do. And he keeps kicking himself for choices that he's making. I just laugh because I passed that. I got that checked off my list. Okay, but so the love and belongingness, why are you guys searching for relationships now in your lives? No! We think she's us for too much. But what happens to your family at this age of your life? They stop loving and caring about you as much. They still do. But it's weird that your friends start caring about you more than your family cares about you. Your friends ask you how you're doing way more often than your parents ask you how you're doing. I cannot remember the last time my mom actually called me. She'll send me an email occasionally, and every so often she turns off her phone and then like turns on her phone and like responds to every text message she's received in the last 15 months and then turns her phone off again. So we get like 16 different text messages for one big burst. Because I don't see why people use these things because they're just so busy. Okay, Mom. Okay. But as you get a little bit older, you start searching for love and belongingness. It doesn't necessarily mean a romantic partner. What it actually means can be a major. If you find a major, what does that mean? You belong to a group of people who are studying a certain thing. That's an important thing for you to do right now. So then we get to esteem. Yeah. Sort of. I'm spinning it that way, but we'll explain it. Yes and no. So yes, I'm looking at it. I'm combining Erickson with this to make it, but you'll see. Okay. So as you try to find family, then we start getting into this little sliver called esteem. What's esteem mean? The word's respect. Self-value. Well, not just self-value, but value from other people. We were having this discussion this morning while Anna was complaining that I had wrinkled papers that I was handing her to grade. Anyway, I'll have a folder next time so I don't just jam these in the bottom of my bag that get all smashed by the time they get to my office. Sorry. Okay. But sometimes if someone doesn't respect you, when you say something, do they even listen or hear you? No. So what does that do for yourself? You feel less respected. So how does that make you likely to continue pushing forward? Remember, this is about motivation. You don't. Unless you're getting respect from other people, a lot of times, unless you're getting respect from other people, your motivation level goes down. Doesn't mean that you stop, it just means your motivation level goes down. But if you are getting respect from other people, what happens to your motivation level? They go up. So the topic we were talking about this morning was that I took a women's studies class at San Diego State. And a women's studies class is basically it's a way of studying sociology through looking at the lens through a female eye. And if there was a few males that took the class, we were not allowed to talk. Right. And whenever we did talk, the faculty would, if we had something useful to say, she would acknowledge it. But if we said something like, well, I don't, and like, we don't care what you think, just kind of that level of ideology, it took for years to figure out, why was she such an angry person? And the answer is because that's how women are often treated most of the time. So a woman has something important to say at the board meeting, she starts saying it, and the men cut her off and say, yeah, whatever, it's not important. Don't tell me how you think, just give me information. But a guy says, well, I think, and everybody goes, well, really, Mr. Simpson? So you laugh, but it's throughout history, That's how men and women have been treated differently. It's the same thing we talked about with race earlier. You're treated differently just based on the phenotype that you're expressing at that particular moment. And so the idea of this esteem is that as you work on esteem, we're going to talk about this in a slightly different way in just about 2 minutes, but as you work on respect, what's more important, self-respect or extrinsic respect? They're the same. Brace yourself. We'll get there. So what's the ultimate? What is the aligning of your chakra? Oh, sorry. What is it? I have to do it at least once. What does it mean to have your chakra properly aligned? What's at the tippy top? Your crown chakra. Mindfulness. When you become properly mindful, you sit up at the top of yourself and look down at yourself and understand all bits of yourself. You are truly mindful. Let's see if my left leg is working much better now. Let's see if I can. My arms don't go above my head, but they should go straight above my head, but they don't. So I can sit here, close my eyes. Almost. Okay, let's see if my right leg can do it. So why is closing your eyes difficult? It takes a lot of your balance out. Oh, wait. I can't quite do it well. I'll do it this way. Okay, but I spend a lot of time practicing balancing with my eyes closed. Why? It's really hard. Well, because what it does is it helps you figure out all of your chakras are aligned properly. If there's something wrong with my hips or one of my legs, my right leg is not as strong as my left leg. And because my right leg is not as strong as my left leg, when I try to do this to my right leg, what happens almost immediately? I start teetering, which is interesting because I'm generally goofy foot when I snowboard and surf, which means my right leg should be dominant, but it's not. Moving on. So I'm working on it. But one of the biggest thing about trying to make sure your chakra are aligned is that you have to have this, what's called, Maslow said, self-actualization. When you're self-actualized, you have your ultimate potential. What is your ultimate potential? What's the point of this again? Motivation. Do you think you ever reach your ultimate self? No, because the idea is to motivate you to be the ultimate self you can be, not to actually have the ultimate self. And so as you work up this ladder, you have to satisfy your basic biological needs and safety. However, do some people sacrifice their needs and safety for their family? Yes. So because the motivation for family is more important than the motivation for shelter and basic biological needs. Do some people sacrifice respect to satisfy their family? Yes. Some people will steal in order to help feed their family because the family is more important. So one of the biggest criticisms that Maslow has, and a criticism of yoga, is that this works really well for Western Europeans or people from India. How come it doesn't work for all cultures? Because some cultures are structured differently, some things, the ultimate self might be being a good parent. The ultimate self might be someone who is more devout to their religion. The ultimate self is defined differently. In Maslow, he defined it as your own personal goals. Again, Western psychology says that you have an ultimate ideal self that you want to become, which we'll talk about a lot more after spring break. But you have this ultimate ideal, this self-actualization. Once you become self-actualized, you are then free to be creative and do whatever you want because you understand your true self. Hippie crap. Okay, so now, do some people go through this in different ways? Yes. Some people suffer their entire lives and all of a sudden discover something. Then what happens once you discover your ultimate purpose? No, usually what's really fun about this is that once you have figured out, like, is there a secret to life or a meaning of life? Aside from 42, but that's irrelevant. Because with Adam's fans, that's funny. Otherwise, I'm stupid. Different for everybody. Who defines what your ultimate self is? You define your ultimate self. And so I'm going to slide back over to what we talked about at the beginning, is there's two layers of motivation that go with this, intrinsic and extrinsic. If you follow your intrinsic self to your ultimate goals, you become your ultimate self. But how do you get esteem? Extrinsic. You get your esteem, you get respect from other people. You can have, there's a disorder we'll talk about later in the semester called narcissism. Narcissism is where you get all the respect from your own self. Irregardless of however people treat you, you feel you are the best self there is. Why is that a psychological disorder? Well, because that's not the way humans are supposed to be. And I say that because most humans have evolved not to be that way. Is narcissism common or rare? Extremely rare. We can also create it. Hollywood. Anybody have rich Hollywood parents that want to buy their way into college? Oh, I love it. It's just like, to me, it's just funny that people are shocked by this behavior. But why are they shocked by the university but not shocked by the parent? Because you assume that they're narcissists. But again, I guarantee that this has happened in the past. I guarantee that this has been going on, where they have some small club sports that allow a certain number of athletes in, and a parent goes, hey, I rowed once at a college class that I took. Can my son row for you? Sure. Okay, my son doesn't ever like water and he won't go near, but can he row for you? Sure. Stanford University coach, let him in, please, because they just gave the program $30 million. Okay. We were just looking at the math on this. My daughter was we were looking at colleges this weekend for my daughter. To get into Cal Poly SLO, it's 4.13 GPA out of high school to get to Cal Poly SLO. Or 3.4 if you transfer. Yeah, you think? Because it costs, to go to school there, it costs about 16 grand a year. To go to school here, wait, if you do the part of the Promise program, it's free. But you have to go to class, and you get to talk to people and do sports. Anyway, but it's funny because but why do people say, well, I have to go to the 4-year, I can't go to community college? Esteem. It has a lot to do with respect, and it has a lot to do with esteem. Where'd you go? I go to community college. Oh, really? What'd you do? How many years are you in for? Anyway, but even the counselors were saying, hey, if you go to community college, you'll never graduate. 15% of students only 15% of students graduate. Well, that's actually true because only 15% of students fill out the checks box to graduate. What do most students do? Transfer and don't graduate. So when the high school counselors are looking at the statistics, they're citing the statistics correctly, but every single one of my students in my psych program got in somewhere this year. Everybody. Well, why do they get in somewhere? Well, because they're applying and they're learning stuff, and the ones that don't make it don't really want to make it anyway. So I had a bunch of wonderful students that that kind of failed miserably when they first got here. But what's the benefit of failing miserably when you first get to community college? Okay. Yeah, you go, shit. And then you take a step forward and you can try again. We're very lenient on that sort of thing. What if you screw up at San Diego State? You're done. They put you on a list and they say, no. But what's great about it is one of my students was I think I mentioned this before, I can't remember now, but she moved out of house when she was 18, burnt the bridge with her parents, lived with her friends, started going to college, failed all of her classes. had to spend a lot of time repairing bridge with parents, moved back in, came back, started taking her classes again, and eventually she finished and got her master's degree and is very successful now. But why did it take that burning of the, crash and burn semester to figure it out? She had different motivations when she got out of high school. None of her friends went to college. She lived with a bunch of friends who didn't go to college. If you live with a bunch of people who don't college, it's very hard to college. If you live at home with a bunch of people who don't college, it's really hard to college. Because when you say, well, I have a test tomorrow, they're like, I took a test in high school once. You don't need to study. But again, so that's why, what's interesting about this, about motivation when you start looking at this little triangle. Every single person doesn't just grow through this pyramid. Every day you are challenged on different levels of this pyramid. One of the kids on my friend Henry's, his son plays water polo. One of the kids on his water polo team took a header in Mammoth and got knocked unconscious. Do you know how much a helicopter ride off the mountain costs? At minimal, 90 grand. And then they had to flight him from Mammoth Hospital to Los Angeles to the hospital because he had a spinal concussion of some sort. It's another something, maybe 100 grand to life flight him across the Sierras to get. Now, why was he skiing? It's fun. Well, intrinsically, I like skiing. I like snowboarding. I like going out playing in the snow. But as a young punk kid who nothing can go wrong for, are you likely to go jump off of stuff? Yeah. He was wearing a helmet and everything. Anyway, so you're going to be careful this time when we go skiing. But, so do you risk safety for reward? Yeah, why? In the moment, the reward, the extrinsic reward, is greater than the intrinsic danger. So, this is something that when we start talking about this motivation, every one of you has a different pyramid. Every single one of you has a different pyramid. What's the point of trying to keep your chakra aligned? But what's the point of knowing about this? Well, you can feel what's out of balance. Okay, so going back to working really hard to get the drug, okay, because that's a really good example of this. So if you are, not you specifically, but if somebody's addicted to a drug, sorry, I just threw you a drug addict on your head there. But if someone's addicted to a drug like a painkiller, why are they continuing to use it? Where on the pyramid is that? Physiological, not psychological. Physiological. Do the withdrawal symptoms of opiates, do they hurt? Yes. How many days of taking an opiate, like a painkiller, like Vicodin or Percocet, how many days do you need to take it before you notice withdrawal symptoms? After 3 days, if you take a dose for 3 days, then the day you stop taking it, you feel achy. It feels like you have a cold or the flu or like you worked out. Those are withdrawal symptoms. It happens that fast. Most people don't even notice that. You take them for 5 days, it feels like you have the flu when you stop taking them. Did the farm companies know this when they were sending lots of them out? Yes. There's lots of internal memos that are popping out on the radio this morning. All these internal memos from the company that makes OxyContin saying, we got to be careful because of how addictive this stuff is. OxyContin is more scary because if you use it properly, it works great. But what do most punk kids do? This happened to Valhalla years ago. They grind it up and then snort it. And so that's heroin level strength from a little pill that you steal from grandma. Okay? Anyway, so the drugs affect the bottom of the pyramid. So if you affect the bottom of the pyramid, what happens to the rest of the pyramid on the way up? Gets out of balance. And so it's kind of, there's a whole area of psychology that's called holistic psychology. And I'm a really big fan of health psychology. If I go back and get my PhD, I'm going to get it in health psychology. It's about the study of what it means to be healthy, maintaining balance in health, and not crystals and aligning chakras and putting rocks on you to focus your chi different places. Mr. Miyagi. Sorry, I'm not into that. But I'm really into the idea of holistic psychology, that you have to focus on the whole self, all of these levels of the pyramid simultaneously, to understand when you say happiness, when are you truly happy? When you're in balance. When does your body not hurt? When everything's in balance. And that's why we do a lot of the workouts that we do. We do a lot of things with one hand, like a lot of the exercises just with one hand, like the kettlebell stuff. We don't do a lot of two-handed exercises. We don't use barbells very often, because when you do an exercise with a kettlebell in one hand, what does it force the rest of you to do? Move around in order to balance. Like today we did lateral step up. So you stand sideways to a box and you step up onto the box holding a medicine ball, and then you step off the box sideways, not forward, but sideways. Is it easy or hard? It's a lot harder than stepping forward. But why would we do step sideways, not step forward? It's harder to balance stepping side to side. Your body's not quite as designed as well to jump side to side. It's much better going forward and backwards than it is side to side. It's actually not nearly good going backwards either. It's very good going forward. Okay. Someone with T-Mobile has a phone call. Okay, so now. So how do you focus on this then? I'm going to shrink this back down. How do you focus on goals? What is a goal, first of all? Yeah, but motivation is wants and drives. What's a goal? I'm going to write this. So could you say, if you say, I want to go to medical school, is that a goal? But what does that goal entail? Sub-goals. So when you set goals, you should have the big picture, the large picture goals, the giant intrinsic things that you want to do. But if you say, I want to go to medical school, and you're suffering through an introduction to psych course, the end goal doesn't seem very rational when you're sitting through this class. So, like, what are some of the goals that you have just for this particular class? Okay, so 1 is get an A. 2, pass, depending on your level of motivation. 3, what else? Those are end of the semester goals. What are some goals that you can use that are even closer? Learn something is too vague. It's not a really good goal. We had a big discussion that there are pink lemons. In one of my classes, somebody asked about pink lemons. I'm like, pink lemonade, does it come from pink lemons? And like, well, that's a really interesting question. We happen to have a pink lemon tree at our house. Oh yeah! And it's got 3 lemons on it. It hasn't had one ripe yet, but we're very excited. Yeah, pink lemons. They're a thing. I will bring one in once we have one. It's very exciting. But it turns out that, well, again, so you learn something. There are actually pink lemons to make pink lemonade out of. We can't wait. However, but does that help? Do you learn something? Check. I'm satisfied. Yeah, easy goal. But that's not really relevant to passing this class. Yeah, okay. So all of a sudden you have this, pass the test. Is that much easier of a goal to understand? So think about this. Passing the class is this big, broad goal. There's lots of little tiny behaviors within that in order to get to that goal. So if you think of these giant goals, it's good to have these giant goals, but how should you set your goals so you can achieve them? Baby steps, okay? And you set the little baby step goals so that you can get to the ultimate goal when you want to get there. And sometimes, here's the fun part, is that if you focus on the little goals, what happens to your end goal? Or you have to go back to school and change what you thought you were doing because you changed your goal at the end. No offense to the person who did that. Because what did you get your degree in? Psychobiology, but you forgot to take the intro psych course for a while. You taking the GRE subject test? Why are you taking this class? Yeah. So make sure that you tell me what stuff it didn't cover, and I'll make sure I cover it. So the UCLA is not? Okay, so the goals for everybody in here are slightly different. Look, everybody has different reasons for being here. But what's fun is that it doesn't really matter, because if you go back and look at the individual parts, individual goals can match up all along the way. The end result might be different. The end result might be different, but when you get back all the way down to the beginning, those little tiny goals, can you work together to pass the test? Yes. Can you work back together to get in your master's program or doctoral program? Nobody's going to help you in here to help get your doctoral program. Sorry. But it's good. No. But the idea of this is that when you try to set goals, it's the same thing as fitness goals. We're going to go back to the main point of what we started with, is that if you say, okay, if I exercise, exercising is really important to you. Are you done? Okay. Exercising is important. The reason exercising is important, it makes you live longer. Okay? It makes you able to do stuff and have more fun doing things. For example, if you exercise and you go to the mall, you can shop more. Because you don't get tired. You can drink more, because you don't get drunk as fast. Sorry, it's not important, but some people it is. Okay, so, but if you exercise, one of the biggest things at my age, guess what happens to your brain as you get older? It deteriorates. And the number one cause of brain deterioration is vascular degeneration. So like when all the little blood vessels start breaking down, blood flow doesn't get quite to all the little nooks and crannies of your brain, and what do? They die! Sorry. So it turns out that people that get Alzheimer's have lower blood flow in their brain. Why? Well, maybe they didn't get their ass off the couch in their 50s and 60s. But people who are very active all the way through their 60s and 70s have a much lower probability of getting Alzheimer's. Even though our friend of ours that has Alzheimer's, she's finally in a home now because she doesn't recognize anybody and doesn't have any self-care for toiletries or anything like that. So she just goes to the bathroom wherever. She was very active her whole life. Oh. Well, but if you look at the general statistics of it, if you're more active, it decreases the probability. So is being fit now really affect you that much? No. You can be pretty unfit until your 30s and never notice a difference. But as soon as you hit your 30s, especially if there's a magic year, 36, that's when you change chapters in developmental psychology. You're with the 20-year-olds up until 35, and in chapter 30, and 36, you take that step, and you're with the 50-year-olds all of a sudden. It's amazing how fast the wheels fall off at 36, yeah. It does help with other things if your social group is important, if that's important in your social group. Because a lot of my friend Henry hates working out. He said, I've worked out enough in my life. But he also pulled the crap out of his hamstring. Why did he pull his hamstring? No, not working out. The reason that I work out, the reason I lift weights is so that when I crash on my bicycle, I can get back up again and go, ow. If you're not fit, you break things more likely. So old people, like 70 plus, what prevents them from falling down and breaking hips and legs and things? Bone density. Lots of bubble wrap. No, bone density. How do you maintain bone density? All women should know this. Pick up heavy things now in your life, in your 20s. It increases your bone density. What happens by the time you're old? You always lose bone density, but if you start with heavier bone density now, you lose less as you get older. You see people at the grocery store like walking like this? I'll be walking like this. Ow! I'll probably have ruined my knees by that point. They make new knees. They don't make new spines yet. Maybe. There's an old guy, real quick, Frank, who's 68. He's had multiple spinal issues because he never worked out his core, so he's got all these spinal issues. And all these spinal issues, if you hurt your back, what happens to your abs? They get jiggly. And if you get jiggly abs, what happens? You hurt your back more. Pick up heavy things. Okay. We'll finish this on Monday.